Check, check, check. Okay. We all just got locked out. The building used to be open till 8. Now they're locking it at 7. All right, so I'm Casey, and who are you guys? Courtney. Courtney Kennedy? Okay. Michelle. Mina? 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 Monet. All right, we know each other.
Yes.
Okay. And what was that? Anna. Which one? Oh, okay. What do you like to go by?
Anna.
Anna? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yep. Okay, let me just check back here real quick. This is my idea. Okay, nobody else in person yet so far, so let's go with that. All right, so we got Courtney, Michelle, Monet, Anna. All right, so let's see what's going on here. Everybody's here for ART 184, right? Monet, what did you already took 200,
yes.
right?
I got me into that one.
Okay. Yeah, usually people go the other way, but
yeah, I don't know that really happens. But
so is everybody a digital media arts major? Okay, and you've all seen Kristen Bennis or communicated with her? She's our official advisor. So she's the one you want to be contacting about advising, but this week is totally swamped. So here's how this class is going to work. This is high flex, right? And so the way that's going to work in this class is that I'm here teaching all day on Mondays and Wednesdays. And so this class, 184 starts at 7:30 and on Mondays and Wednesdays. As you can see, there's more people in the class. And so it's going to be in person and online. The in-person stuff happens here. You can take the class in person or online. You don't have to commit to one or the other. You can go back and forth as needed. The way I'm doing participation is on a week-by-week basis, right? And so if you come in person during the week, that counts, right? There's a Canvas assignment we'll see, and that will be, you just need to say that you were there in person that week. If you're participating online, you need to record a video question or comment for Wednesday's class, and that counts as your online participation. All the lecturing I do here, is here. So if you're here in person, you're hearing all of it. And then I'm doing it right now. All the time I'm recording video, screencast of what's going on. So, well, you can sort of see it. It's essentially the screen, but I do have a camera, so I show up in the bottom, like all the other videos I've done for the other classes. And so that all gets posted online, right? And so when you're not here, you're able to see all of that stuff. And even if you are here, it's all there if you want to go back and look any of it. It all goes to the YouTube channel where I post all of my classes. So does that make sense how this thing is working for HiFlex, right? Obviously, it's easier to communicate in person. So if you have a lot of questions or something like that, it makes sense to be here just to sort of get through things quicker. My getting a hold of me, I'm here all day on Monday and Wednesday. So I start teaching a class that starts at 9 a.m. and then this is obviously the last one during the day. So I'm here. My office hours are in the middle of the day. Usually I'm not in my office. I'm here in this room doing something else between 11:30 and 12:30 on Mondays and Wednesdays. I do have an office, although I haven't technically moved in yet. I switched offices, and so this is a new one. Hopefully after the middle of September, I'll be in there. But even then, most of the time on Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm in here teaching almost the entire day, right? So there's 4 classes. There's another section of 184 right before this one. So that class is in here 4:30 to 7. And this class is from 7:30 to 9:50. We're starting today. We're every Monday and Wednesday except for September 6th. That's like 2 weeks from today. There's no class. It's Labor Day, right? Or the observance of Labor Day. So everybody's off that day. And we're done on 12/13, right? So that's December 13th. That's a Monday. So it would be at this time on that Monday would be the final portfolio review. So there's no test in this class. We're putting together an animation portfolio over the course of the semester, working on different projects. We do about a project a week, and those will be due on Monday, right? So that's sort of the pace of everything. We make a bunch of different projects in this class. I'll show you some as we work along here, but we produce a bunch of small animation projects. And then at the end, we make an animation reel. A reel being like your greatest hits, all of your stuff put together. Reel, R-E-E-L, right? It used to be all of your good stuff on a reel of film. But in this case, it's not film, it's just a video. There's no textbook for this class. All of my YouTube lectures are up there. And we use LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is a big tutorial site. And I'll assign different series from there to watch for different projects. And we'll work on logging into that here in a minute. Having an external hard drive in order to work back and forth. And let's talk about the computer situation. So if you're doing the class mostly online, you want to have a computer at home that'll work for this class. And so what I recommend that people have is a computer with a dedicated graphics card, right? And so it has a separate graphics card, not an Intel integrated graphics card. And that's for working at home. Or if you have a laptop and you want to bring it to work on that here, that's also fine. A lot of students do that now. All the software that we need is also on all of these machines here in the lab. And the lab itself is open during our class time, obviously, but then it's also open, hopefully it'll be open at other times, like for Open Lab during the week. But that isn't exactly worked out yet. We have to see how the schedule sort of shakes out this week. So exactly when I'll be open, I'm not sure. I'll be able to tell you guys soon. So what's going on with your computer situation? Were you guys planning to use the computers here or your own computers? Mostly. The ones here. Yours doesn't have the, okay. And Anna? You have one? Is it a, use yours, yeah. Is it a laptop or a desktop? MacBook. Okay, okay, yeah, MacBook, that's good. Michelle? Okay, what's that?
I have a computer at home.
Okay. And
So am I okay to just bring a hard drive and then?
Yeah, yeah. It's a desktop, not a laptop? Okay. And the same thing? Okay. And then is it desktop, does it have an extra dedicated?
No,
Okay, so we'll get to that in a second, but that's what we're looking for. It'll make things easier to run. The rest of the syllabus here, the different pieces of software we're going to use, I'll get to all of this in a little bit. And our COVID situation is that the official school policy is that if anybody is within 6 feet of someone who tests positive for more than 15 minutes, the person who tests positive has to quarantine for 14 days, and anyone who is within that 6-foot bubble for more than 15 minutes also has to quarantine for 14 days, right? So in this class, it's not terrible. It's already happening online, right? And so in which case you would just be an online person for that amount of time. If something happens with me, then this part of the class will move online, right? Instead of doing it here in person, I'll be, broadcasting from my house, essentially, probably. And that's the plan as it exists right now, right? Yeah, because we'll see what happens with this class going forward. Right now, there's more people registered for this class that I assume are taking it on. I did send out the online information before. Did you guys get that in your email?
What?
About the hybrid, high flex nature. You got that? Okay. Let's check. We'll check the emails here in a second. Okay. Let's look at the class real quick. So like I said, there are 2 sections of 184. The one happens right before this. Both sections are combined on Canvas. So keep that in mind. There's a whole 18 or 19 students in the other section, plus like 18 in this section. So it's whatever that is, over 30 students. Let me do this. In Canvas, everything I lay out for you guys is in modules, right? So that should be the only thing you have to worry about on the left-hand side. You go to modules, and we see everything laid out here. All the projects will be sort of laid out, and then this will expand. This is the weekly question submission if you're online, or if you're here, you just need to say I was here in person. I'm just trying to create one coherent community of everybody who's working so that the people online aren't just sort of invisible people taking the class. Like, you know about them, you've seen them ask questions, they know about you, so on and so forth. Does that part make sense? Okay. So check this out about your computer working. We need to have a separate GPU. So if you look here, you go to, you guys have Macs or PCs? PC? PC? Okay, so if you go to System Information, and you unfold over here under Components, Display. So let's see, it says NVIDIA up here. You want to have a separate graphics card. So how do you know if it's a discrete graphics card? You're looking for two words. NVIDIA, I would write these two down. NVIDIA, right, which is NVIDIA, which is one of the graphic, there's two companies that make all these cards. One is NVIDIA, and the other is AMD. AMD is confusing because AMD also makes CPUs, which is like the main primary brain of your computer. But in this case, if you click on System Information and then Display, you can see up here what it is you're dealing with. If it says something like Intel or integrated, that's not what we want, right? Ideally, you want a separate card, right? So you'll hear people refer to it as a discrete GPU instead of an integrated GPU. That would be best. For Wednesday, there's a syllabus acknowledgement quiz, right? So read through the whole syllabus and take the quiz. And then the main deal is that on your computer at home, I want everybody to get all the software that we use is on the machines here, and you can put it on your home machine as well with some work. And so what are we going to be using? We have Miro for this assignment. It's like a note-taking whiteboarding tool, right? And so sort of logging in, all the instructions for getting or signing up for all these things are all in this assignment, okay? This technology login challenge. This is all the stuff you need to log into for Wednesday. OBS. So what I'm using right now to record the screen and myself, that is OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. You may have heard this before. This is what people use a lot for game streaming, like on Twitch and everything else, OBS. And that's free, open source. And so when you record your online questions, that's what I want you to use. There'll be a tutorial about recording your questions using OBS. Slack. So Monet took my class before. Slack is how we communicate when we're not in person. Okay, so obviously, like, how do we talk to each other? Well, when you're here, it's pretty easy. On times other than Monday and Wednesday, if we're talking to each other, it's on Slack. So does anyone use Slack besides Monet? Yeah? So it's like Discord. If you guys use Discord, you know, it's like a siloed messaging place, right? Slack has separate channels, and you want to sign up for the ART 184 channel. Again, all of the students from the section before and this section are all in that channel. So there'll be a lot of people in that channel. So one of the things on your technology login challenge is to write an introduction on Slack and post some of your previous artwork, okay? And respond to some of the other students who are doing the same thing. This is the invitation link to sign up for the GCC Slack. If you're already on it, you just need to also subscribe to the new channel, right? Because you were probably in the 200 channel, you want to be in the 84 channel. Does that make sense for everybody? And then there's a link to download the app. I have it on my home machine. We don't have it on the computers here at school because it doesn't work installing it here because these are multi-use computers or whatever. And then there's also a phone app. I have it on my phone, so it's easy to, you know, just talk to everyone that way. And so Slack is where we want to talk about anything having to do with the class. You know, the art, the technical stuff, all of that kind of thing. Ask those questions on Slack, all right, so that I can see them, everybody else in the class can see them, you know, I can answer them, everybody else can also answer them, you guys can talk to each other. All those kind of questions should happen on Slack. If there's some sort of question about your grade or personal situation, then send me an email. But the class-related questions, the project-related questions, all of that I want to happen on Slack. That way we can all help each other out. You know, it's not just one way from me to everybody else. Does that make sense? Cool. LinkedIn Learning. Like I said, LinkedIn Learning is this big tutorial website that we'll use as our textbook for some projects. If you took my class before, we've used this, although everyone got their account reset, and so we'll need to all sign into this here. We'll do it when I'm done talking here in a little bit to make sure everybody can sign in. And so this is where you go to watch a lot of the things. Adobe, again, you need to sign into it, but it's on all the machines here. And if you download Adobe Creative Cloud, you can sign in through your Maricopa at home. You guys have probably all done that, right, for Art 100 or some other class? So that is all still good right now, or at least through the end of this semester. The other piece of software we'll use primarily is Cinema 4D. Okay, so Cinema 4D is the name of the software. Cinema 4D is made by a company called Maxon, M-A-X-O-N. You can get a student license to put on your home machine for Cinema 4D with all these steps here. Okay, so you need to make a My Maxon account, and then it ends up, when you register on Kavuto, it's $3. Right? It's like a processing fee just to set that up. But it's the whole software for a 6-month license, and then once that runs out, if you're still a student, you can just keep renewing it. And then for this project, I have you guys taking screenshots of all of those things and then submitting them as, sort of proof that you made it through this sign up / registration gauntlet. Sound good? Any questions about all of this?
I just have I had pretty much since last year I took so since I'm going to be, you don't want me to on
Yeah, there's no reason not to. Yeah, it's not, I mean, the worst case scenario is it either doesn't run or doesn't run well.
Okay.
It's not going to nuke the machine or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, yeah, you don't need to register here. It's already on these computers.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The, Adobe is also on these computers, but you do need to sign in to that one. Maxon, you wouldn't need to sign in. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. Yeah, so the things, you don't need to go through the registration process again. Like, you should just be able to log into your account, because it was just this summer, right? Not the spring, right? And so your license is still good. You just need to download it and then sign in. Okay. Okay. Let me go ahead and stop this recording. Okay, but everybody has to reset LinkedIn Learning. And so why don't we take a second to log in and do that. And so log into these computers with your MEID, right? And in your student email, you should have an invite sent within, I think I sent them on this past week, right? So within the last 7 days. An invite to LinkedIn Learning. And you want to click on that and sign up for LinkedIn Learning using your MEID. Now, do any of you guys have a LinkedIn account? You do. Okay. So, because the nomenclature here is ridiculous, right? So LinkedIn Learning is the tutorial website. LinkedIn is like the professional social media thing, right? When you accept the invitation to LinkedIn Learning in your email, it'll ask you, do you want to link LinkedIn Learning to your LinkedIn profile if you already have one? Don't do that. It just makes the login process even murkier. So just keep it separate from whatever professional LinkedIn identity you already have. Does that make sense? So just if it says, do you want to put these together? Don't do it. Just keep them separate. Sound good? Okay, so try that. Go ahead and log in, check your email, see if you can.
Password login for
You said it's in our student email?
On, if it's not there, search for LinkedIn invitation. Remember, LinkedIn is one word. Yeah, that's it. Hold on, let me reset them. So what's your last name? Shall quit Chrome totally. In fact, log out of the computer, log back in, and have another info. Okay. Or 215.
Yeah.
Okay, just you're good. Cool. So the other thing I just started trying out clearly right now is that, I can't guarantee this, but if it works good, yeah, I mean, I'm streaming now to YouTube. So in addition to everything being recorded and put up on YouTube, the recording, it's streamed out there right now as well. So some of the students said they're watching it and it works. So
Able to check on the
yeah, so you go to your bottom left-hand corner for
oh,
I just typed it. System information. And then go to
brand new. I have no idea. I have no idea. So I just need,
yeah, so that's good.
oh,
What we don't want to say is yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Cool. People are watching the live stream. That's great. And the other stuff is up online. Okay, so everybody is in now, right? Okay, great. Let's get back to it here. With so in the syllabus, if for some reason we need to meet online, right, or if everything gets shut down and it turns into an online class for a period of time, the online meeting is here in the syllabus, and I would post it on the Canvas homepage. You know, it's a Google Meet meeting link where you can talk to me. This is always the link I use for talking to anybody, whether it's going to be one person or the whole class is right there. Like I said, everything is under modules. Everything is laid out here. So for Wednesday, you want to have the syllabus acknowledgement quiz and all of the technology stuff worked out. Monday is the first animation project. And so again, I have you guys watch a referenced course. This is on LinkedIn Learning, and everybody here can already get into that. Those of you watching at home, look at the technology login challenge and make sure you have a LinkedIn invitation in your email. If you don't, send me a message and I can reset your LinkedIn Learning invitation. And so this is what we're making for Monday. And so we have the bouncing ball, which is kind of like the quintessential intro to animation project. And so I would grab your notebooks. Let's go ahead and think about there's some sort of nomenclature here and some vocabulary that you want to start to get a handle on. And so this first project, over the course of the semester, I'll be more specific at the beginning and less specific as the semester goes on. So at the beginning, a lot of the projects are very specific, and the tutorials I've made are very click by click by click, right? As you're getting to know the software. Later, over the course of the semester, I'll give you much more higher level instructions. Like, oh no, there should be more squash and stretch in this, or this is at the wrong frame rate, re-render this. Because at that point, those things will mean something to you. You'll be able to execute on those. And so don't be turned off at the beginning by being there's not a lot of room for creative freedom in this first couple of assignments as we're getting rolling. Because I want to get people to go through the whole process. And so the whole process for this first project, this is what you would refer to as your workflow, or the other word I would write down is pipeline. When you do this kind of work, motion graphics or animation, you'll hear me use those two words interchangeably. Motion graphics, I think, more describes the whole realm of stuff that we do in this class. It always involves multiple programs. And so you're sending data or images or 3D models between different programs, right? And you need to have a plan for how that happens in order to make sure there's not a loss in quality of some kind. And so, for instance, this is a chart for how we're going to work this first assignment. And we're going to be creating different things in different programs. So if you look at this example animation here, we got 3 bouncing balls. The one on the left was made in Adobe Animate. And so what I would write down there is Adobe Animate, the program, right? That's the name of the program, is Animate, is the program that's used for what is most closely related to traditional hand-drawn animation, where things are being created one frame at a time. And if you look at this closely, that left ball is actually drawn at 12 frames per second. Okay? The middle ball is created in After Effects. And so After Effects is the Adobe animation and compositing program, and it's a little bit more closely related to Photoshop, right? Those of you who have Photoshop experience, usually people coming into this class have a little bit more experience with Photoshop or a little bit more experience with Illustrator. Which one is it? Who's more Illustrator? Do you feel more comfortable in Illustrator? Okay, how about Photoshop? Everybody else? No. Anna? Neither? No? Can't stand Photoshop. All right. Well, I was just about to say, After Effects is like moving Photoshop, but don't think of it as moving. Think of it as moving Illustrator. That'll help, if that helps. Do any of you use another drawing program of some kind, like Procreate? Anybody do Procreate? Krita, yep, Krita. Lots of students like Krita. I've used Krita a little bit, not that much. Like Krita is more akin to Photoshop, right? Open source Photoshop. And you guys draw on a tablet with Procreate, or what program do you use for that? Okay.
Before I was using a laptop, but I think Adobe, there's an actual drawing app, but I think it's
Yeah, they have their Procreate equivalent called Fresco. Yeah. Yeah. You guys?
Definitely.
Just Illustrator? How about you, Anna? Illustrator? You don't use an iPad? Okay. The After Effects isn't really a drawing program, right? You're not drawing in there. Really, you're bringing in graphics that you've created somewhere else, and you're animating them in there. So the middle ball is in After Effects, and then the ball on the right is Cinema 4D, right? It's because this is a 3D animation, and they all come together. And so this is sort of the workflow for this first project. We have something that we created just directly in After Effects, something that was created in Adobe Animate, and then something that was created in Cinema 4D, and they all come together in After Effects. And so this model here is a good guide for what our workflow will be like pretty much over the course of the semester. At the end of our workflow is After Effects, almost all the time, right? Even if you're doing stuff in 3D, it's coming into After Effects for that last stage. The last stage is called compositing, right? Compositing is the fancy word for just putting everything together, layering everything on top of each other. After Effects is essentially a layered program, like Photoshop has layers, and like Illustrator has layers, right? And then when we finally send everything out, it goes through Media Encoder. Media Encoder takes, we'll talk about this some more, but when you encode something, you take a large file and smush it down into something smaller. It's much easier to send and look at. Does that make sense so far? And then the reason I want everybody to get this technology login challenge done by Wednesday is that way, that means you have all of your tools in your toolbox. They're at least ready to go, so that as you work on this project over the weekend, which is actual animation, you know that everything is ready to go. Otherwise, you're like, all right, I'm ready to sit down and work. Then you'll realize, like, oh, I've got to log in to all of this stuff or whatever. That will at least be out of the way. The other thing about the technology login challenge, if you get hung up on something, move on to the next thing. Just try and get as much done as you can. And if there's some sort of problem, then we can fix it on Wednesday. Some sort of issue. Does that make sense? Okay. In this project here, I have given you starting points. So this is important. You want to download those files and use those files as the starting point in all of these programs. I did that so that everyone can do some animating, and so that we don't have to spend the first 2.5 weeks talking about file configuration, right? We eventually need to talk about those things, but it's really not that fun to spend the beginning just doing that. And so I've skipped some stuff here for you so that everybody can work on actually animating something for this first project. So make sure you download those and use those as the starting point for this project. Sound good? Okay, we'll talk more about this project on Wednesday. Like I said, this is due a week from today, right? The technology login stuff is on Wednesday. And then, actually, this door thing may be continue to be a problem. So let me give all you guys my number in case you get locked out and need to get in. So my number is 717 620 9533. I am. Are you from Pennsylvania?
No, but it
Oh, okay.
looks very good.
Yeah, I'm originally from Pennsylvania. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So, where did you live?
I was in Manchester.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Great. Stream seems to be working. All right. If it's that easy. All right, let's talk about After Effects. And as we learn After Effects here, we'll also learn some of the fundamental foundations of how animation works. So we've got After Effects. Like I said, thinking of After Effects as like Illustrator and like Photoshop in that it's primarily functions on layers, except then we have a timeline down here. And right now I'm just going to make a new comp just to, we'll get to some of that in a second. But I've got a timeline down here. I've got the stage. I'm recording right here. All right. I've got the timeline down here. I've got the stage. This is what I see, what's going to be animating up here. And then I have a series of layers. Over here on the left, this is all the stuff that's in my project. There's really nothing in the project yet. And we have effects and some other things over here on the right. We'll get to that. Let's not worry about that too much. Let's get something going so we can see how this works. And so I'm just going to grab the shape tool. Every tool in After Effects that has a tiny little triangle at the bottom is also a menu. I think all the Adobe programs function like this. So if you click and hold, you can get a bunch of shapes. We're just going to make some simple shapes. Usually we're not drawing in After Effects unless it's going to be something super simple, like a circle or a mask or something like that. So bring this up. Same rule applies. If you hold down Shift, it makes it so you don't distort the aspect ratio. Now, the important piece of information here, like we drew a circle, we got a new shape layer down here, and the important thing is right here in the middle. So this is the anchor point for this circle. And I can't stress this enough. You really want to get your anchor points figured out before you start animating anything. If you start animating and then go back and figure out you need to fix the anchor point, that's always bad. And sometimes, most often, you can't even really, just need to redo it. And so figuring all that out beforehand is good. Right next to the shape tool is this tool right here, the anchor point tool. So it says pan behind or anchor point. The shortcut I would write down is Y. Y gives you the anchor point tool. The two most used shortcuts for tools in After Effects, we have Y for the anchor point tool and V for the move tool, or they call it the selection tool. Right, so if I hit V, I can move something around. If I hit Y, I can now grab the anchor point and move it to wherever it needs to be. Most often, it needs to be in the center, right? And so you could grab it and sort of move it to the center like this, but you don't want to do that because that's not very exact, right? Like you're just kind of eyeballing it here. Like, is that the middle? Yeah, kind of. Who knows? So the other command that you want to learn is it's a little strange in that it's a shortcut and the button. And so if you control double click on the anchor point tool, so you're holding down control, you double click, it automatically centers the anchor point to the middle, exact middle of the shape. Everybody see that? So the anchor point's over here, just sort of hanging out. I hold down control and I double click and it snaps it to the middle. So that's a big one to memorize. It makes everything a lot simpler. If I were to grab another draw here, the anchor point again is in the middle of the comp, like the whole screen. If I control double click, there we go. Now it's in the middle of that square. So those are good. I would part of my notes would be like a shortcut glossary, right? So they can sort of keep track of these. So V is selection, Y is anchor point tool. And so we have a shape layer here. And let's keep talking about shortcuts. Let's hit V and move this over. Most of what we're going to animate for the first, I don't know, couple weeks are transform properties. The transform properties are the basic properties for any layer or any object in After Effects. P is for position, right? And so all I'm doing is, it's not Control P or Alt P or anything like that. You just merely select the layer and hit P, and that brings up position. See position below there. R gives you rotation. S gives you scale. And then the one that doesn't fit, opacity, is T, not O, T. So P for position, R for rotation, S for scale, T for opacity. And as I hit those, you see the parameter below changes. And so I could set position, and I have my X and Y. So X moves it across the screen, Y moves up and down. So that's fairly explanatory. Everybody knows this from math class, right? Now the thing that's different, that's confusing at the beginning, is that as I make the Y value larger, it moves down the screen. So this is confusing out of the box. In math class, when you draw the Cartesian plane, 0, 0 is in the middle, right? In After Effects, 0, 0 is the upper left-hand corner, okay? And as Y increases, the object moves down. So we have all positive numbers that are on the screen. So for instance, if I put this at 0, 0, you see it's the upper left-hand corner. And what got moved to 0, 0? The anchor point. Right? Again, important that we got the anchor point worked out. The resolution that you need to memorize is 1920 by 1080. That is high definition video. So we'll always be working with a screen that is 1920 pixels across and 1080 pixels up and down. And so if I wanted to put this circle in the right-hand corner, or upper right-hand corner, the X would need to equal what? So it's 1920 by 1080. 1920. So if it's 1920, 0 puts it over there. If I want to put it in the lower left-hand corner, what's that going to be? What is X going to be? The lower left. X, what is the X going to be? The upper left-hand corner was 0, 0. So the lower left-hand corner is going to be 0. And then the Y should be 1080. And then to put it in the lower right-hand corner, we don't need to change Y. What should X be? 1920. Does that make sense for everybody? And so this is the confusing one, is that the Y is upside down, just in After Effects. If I hit S, I'm in Scale, and the scale is locked by default, so you can't smush things unless you break the chain, and so that's kind of what we want. Just put it back to 100. R for rotation. Rotation is measured in degrees, as you would expect, and we'll talk about that when we have a different shape, because it's not going to make any difference here. And then T, for opacity, allows us to fade something in or out, right? 100%, 0%, 100%. And I'm getting to these by just pressing those letters to pull it up. Make sense? Okay. Let's move this thing. So I've got position, and here it is. I'm going to move the playhead over just a little bit. And how do I actually start animating? Next to any of these parameters is this stopwatch. The stopwatch is a toggle. Okay? So like a light switch, a toggle. It's either on or it's off. And when it's off, no animation happens. When it's on, that parameter can be animated. So once you turn it on, you kind of leave it on. Once you turn on the stopwatch, you leave it on. And so I'll turn it on, and it makes a keyframe right here at the bottom. And so this keyframe is a record of this position at that time. We want to have this move across the screen. I'll move the playhead. So I'm going into the future here. And then I'm moving the position. And it sets another keyframe. And another shortcut is spacebar. It's going to play the timeline. So let me do that process one more time. Here we have one. In order to start doing anything, you need to make sure that the stopwatch is on. It turns blue. That means you're now setting keyframes. And so now I move the playhead forward. If I just were to move the ball, I don't have any animation happening because I'm just moving the ball to a different position at this time. I'm just overwriting whatever the coordinates are at that point in time. I need to move to a different point in time and set another keyframe to actually result in some kind of movement. Now if I move it again, it goes. Move, 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 and if I want any of this to be faster, I'm going to just go back to 2 keyframes just to make things simpler. So I have 2 keyframes here. It moves between here and here. If I want the ball to move faster, the 2 keyframes need to be closer together. It needs to be less time. So if I take this one and I move it this way, I have the same starting point and the same ending point, but less time. I could take both of them, move them over, and hit play. Now it just waits longer. It still has a fast movement. Does that part make sense conceptually? Okay. Let's look at something here. Okay, so that's good. What do you get when you open up After Effects for the first time? I go to Composition, New Composition. This window presents itself. You need to answer these questions before you have a comp. Okay? And so the entire thing here is an After Effects project. Over here, this comp is in this project. So you can have multiple comps in one project. The way to think about it right now is that like kind of each project that we do will be a project, but then each scene in that animation will be a comp. So the different scenes, like you put scenes together into a movie, they would all be in the same project, but each scene would be a separate comp. Now it does get more complicated than that. You can have nested comps and stuff, but that's a good way to think about it at the beginning. And so I'm going to say new composition, and we have to put a width and height in here, a resolution. What is the resolution we're working at all the time? 1080, right? The other word for that is high definition, that is HD. And then frame rate, we are going to do almost all of our projects at 24 frames per second. That's the one you want to memorize, 24. And then at the bottom here, we have time code. Let's talk about time code for just a second. So I'm going to, 2 more shortcuts to know, plus and minus. Plus and minus zoom in and out in time. And so I can zoom in time and zoom out in time. Holding down Control and plus or minus zooms in and out in space. Just plus and minus by itself is in and out in time. So if I keep hitting plus, I get to a point where I cannot move anymore. And if you notice the playhead here, you see how it's not going smoothly anymore? It's locking in to those, it's snapping to each thing. Each thing is a frame. So the frame is the smallest unit of time for us. You can't go in between frames. It's either on this frame or it's on that frame. Each frame gets rendered out to a picture, and there is no in-between pictures, right? There is no picture in between this frame and the next frame. And so if you zoom in far enough, we're down to individual frames. And watch the numbers on the time code over here as I scrub. So I'm scrubbing up 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 1 second. And so time code is in hours, minutes, seconds, frames. That's the one that gets everybody at the beginning. The last number is not fractions of a second. It is frame number. And so halfway between 0 and 1 second is not 0.05. It is 12 when we are at 24 frames per second. Because 12, at 24 frames per second, 12 is half of 24. Does that make sense? Okay. And so that is the last question that you need to answer here, where it has time code. So hours, minutes, seconds, I want to start at 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And how long do I want this comp to be? 0, 0, 0, 4, 0, 0. So that's 4 seconds. Plenty of time for right now. Usually, the default, if you haven't set it at all before, is 30 seconds. And so that ends up being like way too much time for these beginning projects. Just want 4 seconds. So 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second, and here just 4 seconds. So I'll make another comp. And so you see comp 2 has its own blank timeline. I can go back to the tab here. This is comp 1, all the stuff I already did. Here's comp 2. Separate timeline. So working fresh from this one. Make sense? Let's get our hands dirty a little bit here. So let's launch After Effects. You're going to have to log in using your MEID to Adobe and make a new comp and a shape and get it moving. Okay, yeah, that's, they just reset these. For- Actually, Anna, hold on. Perfect. Yeah, close that.
Oh,
I don't need to. Go ahead and make a shape. And grab some water off the room. I'm not leaving the building, just going.
I see it. That just brings up. That time will start. Oh,
That's all. There you go. Yes. There. I have eight. If you want. They had. They play. Stopwatch is on. Don't turn it off. Right.
Like
No, you just need to animate the scale. The only thing you've animated so far is position. See what I'm saying? Here, let's look at that. We'll combine some things. Okay, so grab your notebooks. Let's look at animating multiple things. So we have position. I have 2 keyframes, and this object moves from here to here, right? But Courtney had a question about, she changed the scale, but then it didn't save the scale because you need to set scale keyframes. And so now I selected, right? So number 1, select layer. Number 2, pull up what I want to animate, which is scale. What's the shortcut for scale? Yes. There we go. Now, come over here at the beginning. I need to animate the scale. So when I want to animate anything, I need to turn on the stopwatch. There we go. Now, I have a keyframe for scale. Let's go to here at the end. Right there. Now I need to set another value for scale. Should it be bigger or smaller? There we go. So now if I hit play, it will move and scale. Here's another super good shortcut. I know P will look at position, S will look at scale. It'd be great to see them both at the same time. U shows you every value that has been keyframed. That one is super handy. U. And so now, see how they're both there at the bottom? I can look at position and scale at the same time. And so here, I can be like, oh yeah, these don't really line up. And I want them to happen at exactly the same time. So I can just drag the keyframes so that these are simultaneous. Let's do one more. I want it to fade out. What's the shortcut for opacity? T. Right. And I want to animate it, so I need to turn on the stopwatch. And I need to go to the end and come up with another value. So I'll make it 10. Almost faded out. And I'll hit play. So now it'll move and scale and fade all at the same time. And if I want to see all of that at the same time, all the keyframes, I need to hit U, right? And there's all of the values that I've keyframed below. Now, let's say right now these are all happening at the same time. I move and I scale and I fade. What if I wanted this to be move and then scale and then fade? I have the keyframes I need, I just need them to happen in a sequence. And so for instance, here we go. This is from here to here is move. I'll move this one over. From here to here is scale. And I'll move these over to here. From here to here is fade. And so now I will move, scale, fade. Does that make sense? We're not going to do any rotation because you wouldn't be able to tell exactly. It's so try that. Get some moving, some rotating, or some moving, some scaling, and some fading. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about frame rate. And so these comps that we've been making, we're doing 24 frames per second, right? 24 frames per second is the frame rate. 1920 by 1080 is the resolution, right? The amount of pixels left and right. In general, more resolution is better, right? All of your TVs at home are probably not HD, they're probably 4K, right? Everybody sees that 4K. If you ever go to Best Buy, right? They're all 4K TVs. 2 years from now, they'll all be 8K TVs, right? The 8K TVs are twice as much, and they'll be half as much. HD is what we're working at, and that's 1/4 of the 4K screen. Frame rate is not like that, right? More is not better. 24 frames per second is a style and a speed at which Hollywood films are made at 24 frames per second. Some hand-drawn animation is 12, but most computer animated type things, these are all 24 frames per second. We are not working our way up to 50 frames per second or 100 frames per second. 24 frames per second is a stylistic decision. It's about the quality of the movement, the specific artistic quality of it. And so I'm just going to demonstrate that here, sort of give you that idea. So we got 24, this layer here. This will be 24 FPS. And so let's make this ball move. I'm right here. I'm going to hit P and stopwatch and move it over. I'm going to V, move the ball. If I hold down Shift, it'll lock it so that it moves straight across the screen. It won't go up or down at all. There we go. We got that. Let's make it a little bit faster. Say about there. Great. So I'm going to do something here just to make this a little bit easier. Talk about this later. Cool. I want to duplicate this layer. Just Control C, Control V, and move this one down. And this one, I'm going to make it run at 12 frames per second. Now I'm going to use an effect to do that. Under most circumstances, you're never mixing frame rates. All right, there are some specific styles that happens, but 90% of the time, you're not doing that. Your whole project is at 1 frame rate. And there is an effect over here that allows us to do this. And so I'll put this one on here and make this one layer run at 12 frames per second. And then I'll duplicate it again, right here. And this one, I'll move down and make this one run at 6 frames per second. Okay, so the specifics, what I'm doing here, are not important. It's the demonstration that we're focusing on. And so now, if you look at this, all 3 are moving at the same speed. They have the same start point and the same end point in the same point in time and horizontal space. But they're running at 3 different frame rates. So the top one looks really smooth. We have 24 subdivisions to the second. The middle one has half as many, 12 subdivisions to the second. And the bottom one has 6, right? And so only 6 pictures per second, whereas the top one has 24 pictures per second. But as far as the amount of space that they cover over a specific amount of time, I can highlight them all, hit P, see that all of their, I got an extra frame right here, let's get, all of their keyframes are at the same point in time. Does this make sense? Right? And so this is a stylistic thing. And to be honest, much beyond 24 frames per second, we have a limited capacity as humans to see things faster than that, right? There are some instances where it matters a little bit, but 24 FPS is kind of locked in as the speed at which media is made for the most part. There's some exceptions, one of them being video games, right? If you have a good gaming computer or console, does anybody know like what frame rate that should run at? Yeah, that's usually the benchmark people are shooting for. Games are a little bit different because there's feedback involved. Like you do a thing and it needs to seem like the thing happens immediately, right? And so that necessitates that higher frame rate. Also, games run at a variable frame rate to some extent. Like it'll speed up or slow down depending on a whole bunch of things. Whereas all the stuff we're going to do in this class is locked in, a fixed frame rate, right? It doesn't change, which is why we're able to line things up on the timeline and have it be consistent because the frame rate for everything is the same, right? What I'm doing here is more of just a demonstration of how the different frame rates look, right? So this is sort of choppier look to it. We have 6 frames per second, 12 in the middle and 24 on top. Does it look better over there? Yeah, it does. Okay, it looks really bad on my screen over here. But that, yeah, for the most part, don't worry about it. It just looks really bad on the screen, but it looks okay over there. So does this make sense, frame rate? Right, 24 FPS, that's what we're working at most of the time. In this very first project for Monday, with the bouncing ball, we'll use Animate to make that one hand-drawn ball. But that one, partially because it's hand-drawn, we'll only do 12 frames per second, so that we only have to draw half as many instances of the ball. So more resolution, good. More frame rate, not really, right? 24 is kind of the target. Whereas more and more pixels up to a point is better. Now, there's this whole other issue of screen size in that 1920 by 1080 pixels on this screen, the pixels are closer together than they are on that screen. And so, hence, a bigger screen needs more pixels to look as good as some other thing. Has anybody taken photography class? Yeah. And so the original analog interpretation of this is your film size, right? If you have a larger film negative, you can capture more detail, more information, right? And our modern pixel resolution is essentially the digital analog of that. And so, anyway, like what were old Hollywood movies shot on? Anyone know what film size? 35 millimeter, right, is the standard. If you have a less expensive situation, it would be 16 millimeter, half as big. But same thing here, where we have more, whether you're shooting on a 4K camera or an 8K camera, more pixels generally better. But an 8K camera, even like some really fancy, super great 8K camera, you would still be running it at 24 frames per second because that's our target for quality. Sound good? Cool. Okay. Everybody's got to get all the technology stuff dialed in for Wednesday. Okay? The syllabus acknowledgement. This is the last class today. Want to see Kind of work up to it. We don't need to say challenge, it's all your stuff. And yeah, we'll see how this goes. So you guys are here that you can register.
I can't. Yeah, that work.
Okay. Okay. Some of the online people. There are none. I was streaming this. That was actually way easier than I thought. So I don't know if that's going to be as hard to set up, but I'm probably going to keep that going. So the people are saying that the stream, they could hear me really well, but it was a little, the recording didn't look, or the stream didn't look great, but the recording is good. It's just the live stream is smushed, data-wise. And so is everybody in here a digital media arts major? Minute, you are, right? And then both you guys are doing the digital media arts degree? Okay. And Anna, are you? What is your major? Graphic design. Okay. So you're doing digital media arts, graphic design track. Minute, are you graphic design or animation? Graphic design. And what about you guys? So if you're doing the digital media arts degree, there's the animation track and the graphic design track. Okay.
Whatever's gonna get me in. I'm thinking.
Okay.
I don't know. I want to do artwork for video games. Whatever one. I don't remember. I had option.
Kristen, when's the last time you spoke to her? Like weeks or
March.
years? March. Okay, months.
Yeah. He sent me what I classes. Well, I didn't do something.
Okay. Yeah. So the animation track is probably better specifically for game stuff. Okay. Yeah. Touch base with Kristen again soon, but not this week. There's everyone. There's lots of problems. So cool. All right. See you guys on Wednesday.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.